How to get ready for an interview? Of course, you need to prepare for it. While you have to prepare for it by reading from resources, by practicing the things that you are going to interview for, there is a preparation for the interview itself, and that can be fulfilled by a mock interview. A mock interview is a place where you can appear for an interview. It's not an actual interview, but appear for an interview with its full potential and the preparation. In today's podcast, we are going to do exactly that. Today with me, I have Om, who is still studying but aspire to be a front-end developer very soon, who is also doing internship. He mentioned to me that he want to appear in a mock interview, and if I'm interviewing him the way that I generally interview a front-end developer, it would be great. And here we go. I would like to welcome each of you who are watching today's podcast. Here you will be seeing something different where myself and Om get together and I'll be interviewing Om for a junior front-end developer profile. I'll be going through the questions around JavaScript, React, and things like that. Also, we'll take care of a few soft skill aspect of a developer or a person that I'll be hiring for as well. I hope you enjoy it. See it through the end, and if you have any questions, if you have any recommendation, or if you have anything to share, or if you want to appear in a future mock interview, just let me know in the comment below. I'll make sure I address that. So without any further delay, let us get back and start talking to Om. Hey there, Om, how are you?
I'm fine, Tapas. How's your day been going?
Yeah, evening is going good, and great that we are meeting here and we will be doing a mock interview today. Through this mock interview, we'll also explore a few things like maybe folks who were seeing this at a later point in time, they also will learn as a new. At the same time, you and me also will explore things like which could be new to us as well, right? So in today's this mock interview, our focus would be like how a junior front end developer would seek out for a job and what they can expect from their interview rounds basically. And this is going to run for let's say 40-45 minutes or so overall, and would like to see like what are the areas of front end engineering that we can actually touch base definitely towards JavaScript, React, and whatnot, whatever that comes in the way. But before we get started, why don't you do a quick round of introduction of yourself, like who you are, what do you do, all this stuff.
Right. First of all, thank you for having me over here. So I'm Om Gate. I'm a third year engineering student at College of Engineering Pune. I have been coding for some time during my diploma years as well, which I have pursued. I have been coding starting with Python and C++. Later found my interest in front end development. I am proficient with our basic building blocks as well, HTML, JavaScript, CSS. But I have also built and a good experience in JavaScript, in React, Next.js, and also other frameworks. I have been doing an internship at Vidyartha organization wherein we are leveraging PostCSS and Next.js to create some dynamic applications so that various schools and organizations can donate books, and uh, that's where I have gained a lot of my experience right now.
Great. So the place where you're working on, you're working as a front end developer. What's your responsibility?
So currently in the team, my responsibility is obviously making use of the Figma files and creating various components, understanding the core responsibility, making good responsive web applications and good components. At the same time, there are smaller responsibilities to me, such as making the app performant, handling authentication and authorization of admin side. At the same time, making my own informed guesses or choices of CSS and everything. Since maybe if there's a problem or maybe if there's a gap between the required design, we can still ship code fast as the app currently is in development phase, and we have to obviously as a starting out project have to be really fast with it.
Cool. Right. So when it comes to JavaScript, right? So it's a vast topic. We all keep talking about like how vast is JavaScript and how crazy JavaScript is. Which part of JavaScript do you think that you enjoy doing most?
I think what I like the most is in JavaScript, I like working with APIs and all. In the
Okay.
internship as well, that was one of the that was one of the most important things wherein I had to connect the backend. But in even in my fun projects as well, that's what I do. Knowing about promises and using them. handling them as well. What happens if there's an error? What happens if I get a different kind of a response? And obviously, some data to make it something responsive, and obviously putting up it into a really good UI and showing people some great work. That's really makes it interesting for me.
Great, great. As you spoke about, like, the API interactions and the promises, that's one of my favorite as well. The promise and the asynchronous programming, synchronous programming, and all the stuff. So maybe something that we can discuss from promises. If you could explain or put some light on, like, we have resolve, reject. Once you can create a promise, you can resolve a promise, you can reject a promise. We also have async await through using what we can actually make the asynchronous call. Do you find any differences between them? As per you, is like the resolve, reject on the promise object versus the async await. How do you take these things?
So there is actually a really important, like, there's actually two ways we can handle APIs itself. One is
Hmm.
by promise chaining, wherein we chain it with dot .10 methods, catches, and also there's a finally block as well, wherein irrespective of it, we are going to gracefully exit from that particular promise handling. And there's obviously the async await. What I have seen is that async await is much more, what can you say, it is really easy, or it is really great to work with it. The main important thing over here is we have to understand that JavaScript doesn't wait for anything. So if we are doing promise chaining or anything, and I have to run everything in dot then blocks, it becomes quite tedious to maintain it. With async await, what happens is I can clearly make sure that I'm handling the success part in the try block, I'm handling the error part in the catch block, and
Hmm.
obviously the step-by-step handling with the await. What await basically will do is handle the promise, resolve it, reject it, whatever has to be done. um, just handling that promise is done at await, the next line will happen correctly. So it gives that kind of a synchronous manner of code execution, making it a much better experience for me. That's why I use it. It leads to clear code and maintainable code itself.
Okay, okay, great. So you spoke about the thing, like, JavaScript doesn't wait for anything, right? Do you want to kind of break that into a little bit more, like how it doesn't really wait for anything when it comes to this promises or async await stuff?
Okay, so first we have to understand that, why is it like this.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you are writing a simple JavaScript code wherein, let's say, we are taking two numbers, processing it, adding them, and displaying it.
Simple
So
functions.
yes, so simple functions wherein we are not leveraging any promises or any browser APIs as well.
Hmm.
So what is basically happening is the JavaScript maintains a particular call stack in which a particular function is going to be pushed, it is going to get executed, and it is going to be popped out of it. Now, what happens is, actually in two ways it is handled. There's a browser APIs, there's also promises. They're handled in a bit different way. What basically will happen is whenever in our code we are coming to a point wherein we are using any browser API, let's say set timeout. Now the set timeout functions have a different application wherein they are going to be used at a particular time interval. If you are using set interval, they are going to be continuously called. That should be handled in a different way than our normal stack. So what basically they do, instead of waiting our entire code execution till then, they're going to be pushing it to a particular job queue, or sorry, a task queue, and then other code whichever is in the line is going to get executed till
Hmm.
the call stack is empty. We are going to wait in the task queue for, and if the call stack is empty, only then push this particular function, process it, and then is going to be popped up. Now there's also another thing like promises are a bit differently handled, wherein they are handled in the micro task queue, which has a higher
Hmm.
priority. What basically will happen is whenever we come across a promise, it is going to be pushed into a particular micro task queue, where the eventual resolution or rejection of it is going to take place, because it is going to be asynchronous. We have no idea about when it is going to happen, but whenever it will happen, the callback function of it, like basically when we resolve it or reject it, as soon as the call stack is empty, or whatever resolution or rejection shall happen will happen after that, when the event loop will put the a particular promise resolution into, or the particular function which will handle it, into the call stack again. It is going to be worked and then removed.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's why this event loop and all these things comes into picture. Like in each of the iteration, it can actually see whether the call stack is empty, and it can kind of take the action, right? Where to pull from, which one is there in the job queue, which one is there in the task queue, and what to kind of get into the call stack and for the further executions. Yeah, yeah, those are quite interesting things actually from JavaScript. Once you kind of get in, try to understand like underneath what is happening, and I guess that's when we can think logically and kind of start solving a lot of problems, a lot of problems that are given to us, right? So talking about a problem I can actually think of, not from promises. I'll get to maybe a data structure, like for example, array. Let's consider an array of objects. By the way, any point in time, if you want to share something on explaining by code, feel free to share your screen and start doing that. So let's consider like an array of object, and you would like to check whether a particular match in that array is there or not in the array elements based on an attribute of an object. So let's consider that there's an user object,
Okay.
and every user is having something called an ID. You
Okay.
want to really do a match based on a particular ID that goes as an input, and if there is a match, that user data returns back from that particular user array. Now I want to ask you, like, how can you do it? There are multiple ways to do it.
Hmm.
Two prominent methods that are available in JavaScript: one is filter, another is find. You can do a find, you know you can do a filter. Which method would you prefer in this particular use case, and why?
So the most important thing is we have to understand the intention behind these particular methods. Filtering is basically wherein given a particular property, we are trying to reduce the size of the array given as a
Mm-hmm.
filtered array.
Mm-hmm.
But find method is rather more applicable because in the find method, we are trying to find a particular element.
Mm-hmm.
Over here, we are not trying to compress the particular array into a suitable particular what can you say in a particular format. So let's say ki user ID filter would be more prominent if we say ki I need to filter out all the people who are older than 30 or younger than 30. In that filter would be okay, but with the find method, rather it is more applicable. So if
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is a good explanation. Can I try that method right now?
Yeah, please feel free to share your screen and go ahead.
So consider in this way, if we have a filter method, so how we're going to do is if you have a filter, we'll first take, let's say, a user, and right now I have not displayed any name or not since it is not
That's
important
fine.
for. So what will happen is if let's say we're trying to find a user with the ID 2, and if you run it, and I think we should do something like user is equal to this, and then I'll console.log it, and then we run this. So you can see that I have been returned this. Let's say I give him a name. Let's say it's me itself. Say it's home. If I run it, I'm getting an array returned to me. However, if I do let's and this basically will work, but the purpose of filter is to get the particular array and then obviously working on it to get a
Mm.
refined array of which is of our use. If I
Mm.
let's say if I do find, let's see what we get. Now in this particular, if you see, we are not ending with the particular array. We are
Mm.
actually just getting an object. This is actually going to return us the object which we want to find. This is far better in this use case
Absolutely.
because what basically it will do is going to go through each and every element and going to check if this particular check that if the particular user's ID is true or not is um, is true on if it matches. If it does, then it is going to return that object instead of the array. Otherwise, what we would need to do if it was a filter, unnecessarily we had to check 0 and then get that user. That's not really the
Yeah.
appropriate of array methods.
Yes, yes. Yeah. That is very beautifully explained, because especially when you go for a search or filter kind of mechanism on the UI itself, like you're typing in something and want to, what's your intention basically? Want to, as you told, you want to kind of filtering things to resize the array based on certain kind of criteria, and then want to get the response, versus you are actually doing the finding job. In this case, find makes more sense, the example that you have given, because the end result is directly consumable, right?
Yes.
So that is why it is, that's why it is good. Okay, similarly, I think there are certain amount of confusions again, just like this. When we talk about, we have an array and we have a for each to iterate through array and get the element out of it. We also have another method called map, through which we can still iterate over an array. You want to explain, like, for each versus map, the use cases, performance, anything that you have? I mean, do you have any call to take when a particular circumstances arises, like when I'll be going for each and when I'll be going for map?
So the thing is, as much as similar are they with their working, these methods are quite different. Map method is used wherein we have to generate a new array based on the earlier array. Purpose of map is to map through a new array and with a different kind of our own requirements. Let's say if I want to add in a particular value or maybe make any kind of changes to it and get a new array, that is something which I can work on. Let's say
Hmm.
if I have a let me give you an example. Given a particular array, I want to do, let's say key so I'll with the users, actually let's make something fun out of it. Let's say I have you and let's say I have another person, let's say John. What I'm trying to do now is basically if I have to go ahead and to give you a perspective, map method is used to iterate over an array and generate a new array, but for each method is to just iterate over an array and it does not return us a new array, but we can do any sort of application which we want. So what in this case is possible is that let's say if instead of this it's let's say vacations. So these are the amount of vacations I have. So you have went to you have 1 day of vacation left. I have 2 days. John has 3 days. So I will use map.
Hmm.
Let's say when will I use map? Let's say I want to add 5 days of vacation more. So that would be generating a new list of arrays, approaching this into such a way that we want to update all the elements of it based on a particular function. So let's say keep updating the array, not updating in the sense, but getting an updated array. This is
Hmm.
not actually going to update the original array. It's going to return us
Hmm.
the updated array from earlier one. But for each is just iterate over the array. If I have to, let's say, now we usually do for let or for loops, and we do it such a for let I is equal to 0, I is less than array dot length, and I plus plus. So this is our common use how we use the for method. Instead of that, this is just in a sense it is more syntactically easier for us to use. So wherein I can take a user and then for each, let's say, if I have to do in this case, the array dot push or other, sorry, so user dot vacations plus is equal to 3. And then if I do console dot log of array, let's see what we get. So we're getting like 3 days of vacations added. But the problem over here is that this is not a pure way of doing this. The reason is the original state of the array is now gone, and on that particular original state of the array, we have appended this. So the earlier way, now let's see without add, if after I have added, realize that oh no, I think I chose the wrong users, or maybe this is not the right time to add the vacations. Now I can't go back. Or in
Hmm.
that, even if that's not the case, changing if we can instead of changing the earlier values can create a newer values, that's always going to be better. That would lead to a cleaner, much more purer functions.
Yep.
In
Yep.
this case, let new array will be better because this will return us a completely fresh and new array. So if we do, let's say user and then user dot, or what I need to do now is that user dot vacations have added, okay, plus is equal to let's say 3, but then I have to also return this particular user. Okay, now what I will show you is that I can show you that array and new array. Now in the earlier method of for each method, the earlier array itself was actually changed, but over here let's see what will happen if I run this. Okay, let me just clear this entire thing and then I'll run it. Let's see what we get. So earlier, 4 5. Okay, so I think I should not iterate over it by first. Ah, okay. So what is going to happen now? So we have a map through the array. We have
Mm-hmm.
returned user,
Mm-hmm.
and then why is it that we have gotten the same results over here? Okay, so this is an interesting case.
So why is that happening? Why new array and array is returning the same thing for you?
So maybe what I should do is new user should be
Hmm.
equal to. user. Let me try this because maybe this is
Sure,
the
sure. Take your time. No worries.
new user dot vacations plus is equal to 3, and let's return the new user. Now let's see if this works. The missing semicolon. Okay, what is it saying? Accepted an assignment. So let me see if what actually error it will throw if it is saying so. Okay, so this is the case. So I realize what happened
Hmm.
because we are not actually creating a new object. We are creating a new array, that is for sure, but we are not creating new objects.
Correct.
So what we did here is we have gotten the user, but we have gotten this user by reference. Now what we are saying is we are going to create a newer user with the spread operator. So this has created a new instance of a user. In
Hmm.
that, with based on the earlier user, obviously appended it in the new user and sent this new user. So even though the array might be different, but the object inside of it of the user was same. So this is also a chance to talk about pass by reference and pass by values. Objects
Yeah.
are pass by
I was
reference.
about to come about that. That next is to talk about the pass by reference by pass by value. But I'll let you complete this, conclude this before we go there.
Yes. So over here, if you see, we have maintained the array, new array. So if we are basically now generating a newer array with the particular operation on the earlier array, we can do it in a much more purer sense with math.
Yep.
Let's say if you just want to iterate through a particular array, and let's say we have to increment a particular number, let's say we have to just check through it, whatever we might want to do. For each method is better if you're not expecting or expecting a returned value.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, sounds good. So I was also thinking of going to the references and especially understanding the value. Because when you do programming, we have this concept of value. Without value, basically, there is nothing. Now, the value can be managed and handled in various ways. For there are primitives, there are object type. Just give us a walkthrough of how the value usually get managed in JavaScript.
So basically, we have to understand the data types first. There
Mm-hmm.
are there are two different categories of data types we can assume in. First is the primitives, and the second are non-primitive. The primitive ones are not what can you say, on the lower level we can talk about like strings or numbers, uh, undefined null, and all these kinds of not basically just strings, numbers, and we also have big int as well in that case. Undefined null, true or false, that is boolean. So all these kind of data types are actually passed by a value. That is one of the that is one of the differences or the properties of primitive data types. But in non-primitive, we are talking about objects. We are talking about arrays, which are also a form of an object, functions, and all that. So these are uh, passed by reference. The way it happens is that, let's say if I'm storing a particular value, let's say in an array itself. So over here we are storing a particular value array inside of this particular variable. So what will happen in JavaScript is that instead of let's say we can also have let number is equal to 4. So
Mm-hmm.
consider in the JavaScript, the way values will be maintained would be that in front of the array or this ARR variable, this entire array will not be stored as itself. This will be stored in the memory, but array will store the reference to this particular object.
Hmm.
And then when we do, let's say, different array is equal to array, we are not copying this array in the different array. We are just referencing to the same array. So in this case, what will happen is if we say uh, a different array dot push, let's say uh, id is equal to 4, and let's say name is equal to mark, and let's console dot log array. So what we are basically doing is we are actually equalizing them, updating something in the different array, and then console dot logging the previous array which we have actually passed here. So if I clear this and if I run this, you'd realize that even when we have console.logging array, even if we have changed the different array, the same changes are visible in the array itself, because
Okay.
as the earlier array is holding this particular value, it's holding the reference to that particular object. When different array is also holding a reference to the same array, when
Hmm.
different array is making changes to that array, this we are changing the particular array object itself. So no matter who makes the changes, all the particular variables who are holding reference to that particular array will see these changes reflected upon them as well.
Correct.
But in this case, what will happen is when we have primitive, we are not passing by reference, we're passing by value itself. So when I
Mm.
do let new number will be equal to number itself, now what is happening is that number is saying it is 4. New num is checking is equal to num. What value is num holding is 4. Over here, what was happening? Different array, what value is this holding? Well, actually, array was holding the value of the reference to this particular array. Over here, it is holding the value 4 itself. But now if I do new num is equal to, let's say, 10, and now if I do console.log num, and if I run this, clear this and run this, we are seeing that the earlier num value is unchanged.
Mm.
Better way to do this like this, and if you see, in num is still 4, but new num is 10 as we had checked. So even
Mm.
if I do new num, the reason why I'm doing it in on object is because it would new num is not like this. It is snake case. So new num is 10, but num is 4.
Yep.
So what is happening is new num is not is not subscribed to num variable, checking ki whatever value you are changing, my value will be the same too. We are not saying that we are holding the same value. We are just having that, or we are not looking for a particular reference to a particular value or an object or whatever. We're just holding various values ourselves. When new num changes, it has nothing to do with the earlier variable num. It is still going to hold.
Mm.
Not the case in objects like we had earlier, wherein we had older array and different array. They were holding the same reference to the same object. When one changes the object, it is still reflected on the earlier object. That is the array.
Yeah, so this mutations, immutability are pretty important, right? When we kind of start writing our program, we need to really understand and comprehend like what is exactly getting changed because you are referencing to something maybe not by value, but is by the reference, and you're changing one thing might cause changing something else, right?
Yes.
So as we know in React as well, right? I'm jumping into React for a moment. We have the paradigm of state management right now, and we have hooks like use state, use reducer, the hooks through which we do the state management as well. And there also this mutability, immutability plays a bigger role, like how you change your state versus how you should not be changing your state in a component. So
Yes.
do you have any kind of design pattern or anti pattern or any kind of way of working in terms of managing state? Would like to know your view.
So this actually is something which we have to worry about. Basically, as we know, first let me tell you how state or use state or state management will happen.
Hmm.
So
Sure.
consider use state as our simple state management hook. So we also have use reducer, but it's going to be the same functionality as use state. It's in a different manner for a different use case as well, but the core functionality is the same. Consider use state, wherein we are holding a state variable name and we have a setter function which is going to
Hmm.
update this particular state value. Now, what actually happens is the reason why we are using the specific state variables is because it is highly important for the React reconciliation, basically. As we know that we make reactive applications with the help of state variables. So we, instead of saying state variable is equal to a value, we can't do that. We have to use the set state function, tell the React that yes, a particular component has changed, state variable has changed, so that React can know that hey, I need to check which objects or which elements have been updated, so that I can obviously re-render the particular component.
Hmm. Hmm.
The problem is if the or the value is not changed, the state update does not happen. And the bigger problem and the reason why it is important to understand this case is that it's not going to blindly update it. It's going to check if the previous value and the current value which you have given are same or not. If they are not same, they are going to update.
Hmm.
Like we just saw that arrays are actually, or arrays or any object are passed by a reference. If we make changes in the current array and pass it into the set function, that will not work because the value will still be the same. We are still passing the reference to the earlier array. And what we are saying is that the array has not changed. It's still the same. The array is still there. You can see the reference ID. You have not given me a newer array. I want a different array which you have not passed on. I actually have a React application ready over
Sure,
here. If
sure.
you
Let's see that.
check that, okay.
Yeah,
So let's share the screen over here again.
sure.
And so over here, let's go into the app and let's focus upon our particular count variable, set count in this. But wait, instead of this, let me do
Can you zoom in a bit so that it is more visible? Yeah, sounds good.
this,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, let's say if I have a button and the button says A, and I'll say, so I'm just making use of this particular object, let's say C, and
Mm-hmm.
say it is B. And what I'm going to show is I'm going to show over here div, and I'm actually going to go, let's say over here I say characters, and over here I'll say that characters, or let's make it so that I'll have an input element. Let me do input, and let me have a button.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll do over here is I will go ahead and const yeah, sure, I'll just do it in this case, and instead of this I'll just use an array, let's say for a object, like, because we have already worked with an array. And let me just say user, like, let's still stick with the users thing. Now this input, I'll give a placeholder, let's say as name. And over here, what I'm trying to do is going to save the name and just displaying over here,
Mm-hmm.
user dot name. Okay. So if I save this, what I'll, okay. So there will be multiple values over here, let's say ID and all that, but let's focus over here. Now what I want to do is, if I save this and let's see what results we get over here, is we can see the name. I'll zoom in a lot more over here,
Yeah,
and the button. So the button would be submit.
yeah. Maybe I can text. Yeah, submit.
Yeah. Or even if I just do it reactively over here and I just give over here the, I'll look at the change which will happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just do console.log, let's say event.target, and the value inside of it. Now, when I will check let me check over here what we'll get. Let's look at the console, and let's say I type home, and then I say okay. So the name is going to be shown. Now, what I want to do, I want to show the name over here, but I'm handling a user object. So this is the most important part. Now, let me do this. Instead of this, what I will do is I will do user.name is equal to event.target.value, and then I'll do set user as user.
Hmm.
So I have a user which is this, and then what I want to do, I'll change the name to event.target and set the user, and I'm
Hmm.
also showing the user over here. Now let's see what will happen. And is it running? Have I saved it? We reload it. Yeah. Oh, I'm not console.logging it. That's why I saw console.log. Let's say the user, or let's say the event.target value. So we can say, so value is changing over here. If you see the value, if you look at the console, the value is changing, but it is not getting updated.
Hmm.
Why is that the case? Well, like we talked about the immutability and mutability, basically we have to understand that changing the particular property of an object does not change the object itself. What we want to pass over here is a newer object with the value. The problem which happens in state variables, like we just discussed, if I'm passing the same values, the same object, it is not going to change it. But I have to pass in this, because earlier, if I have, let's say, if I have ID is equal to, let's say, 123, and I'm still passing over here, let's say the user dot ID, I still have to maintain this ID. So how will we do this? Because I have changed this and this. So the better way to handle state in this case is by using a particular function which we can pass, wherein
Mm-hmm.
we can have the access to the previous state. The previous state will allow us to have the knowledge about the previous state of the object itself. I will remove this particular change which I'm doing. And what basically I want to do, I will also what have to return a particular object like we discussed. I can spread the previous object. Spreading the previous object, I'm creating a newer object in this case. So let's
Mm-hmm.
write a bit more readable code. So new user information, let's say, a new user info will be a newer object with all the previous values itself. Newer info dot name will be event dot target or okay. So do I have the access to this? I will have it because obviously I'm still in here. I'm not inside of the object itself. That's why I tried to do colon, but obviously I'm not. So it's fine. And I'm just simply going to return the new user info. So what we are trying to do over here, instead of giving you a newer object, I'm saying, hey, let me ask you what was the earlier user. Then we get that earlier user, that the previous user. We are saying, okay, I'll create a newer user object with the
Mm-hmm.
previous values spread over it. So it creates a shallow copy actually, and with the help of the previous users, we are going to change it into a new user object, and we are going to return a new user. Now this is going to create a newer object. Hence, if we look at this now, yes, the name is changing. I can see
Yep.
over here. I will actually just do one thing, take this away since it's of no importance to us. But if you see, the value is changing. I can go over here and also check it console.log user. When this will happen after every state change because the object will render because the state has changed. Now,
Mm.
home, you can see over here the object is changing. This is a state one. So name is home, ID is 123. Everything is maintained, and like remember I said something. What happens to the earlier values? Well, we have spread across it, so every single value is spread here. I've just changed a particular property, and it does not harm any other value too. So killing two birds with one stone, handling a complex state, but at the same time working on a particular object still works, and we can handle the state easily like this.
Yeah. So if this state goes more complex, like nested and all this stuff, um, I don't think that the spread operator
So
is gonna work because it's just going to do a shallow copy of it. How do you handle a situation where there's a nested object and there's something inside the nested object, some property value got changed? That update, how do you capture?
so basically, if it is a shallow, we can create a deep copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
What a naive approach of a deep copy is that JSON dot we do this in that case JSON dot pass and then JSON dot stringify.
What is the problem of doing this?
The problem with this actually is that even then it will not handle cyclic objects, but most importantly any object. Now let's say we have an object, we have prototypes.
Yep.
So prototypes, what it does is that it has various methods which we can leverage into working over these values. That will
Hmm.
get lost because when we
Hmm.
stringify it, we'll only stringify the properties, and when we'll parse it, it will only get that value itself. But we can create a deep copy function like this and pass in the user, and that can work as well.
Hmm.
That is also
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. So that is very important because I have seen this code of this JSON parse, then stringify parse, and all these things. It's people should not do it very blindly because it has its own repercussion. Yeah, deep copy is the way to go. Either you use any library, JavaScript itself provides something called structure clone, which does a deep copy of object now. So you can use JavaScript API as well to kind of get this thing done. So this is good. Now, we also talk about like this effect, the use effect, side effect management, and all the stuff, right?
Right.
So in the life cycle of a component, like from the time that it started rendering and it has to manage side effect, when exactly the use effect comes into picture?
So the use effect actually will take place after the rendering of that particular component.
Hmm.
At the same time, basically we create a parallel between class-based components and functional components. The use effect actually is used to handle side effects which happen when the component is mounted. So and obviously we also pass in a particular array of dependencies. So based on that state change of those particular variables too, use effect will be called.
So when you say a component is mounted, what exactly in a layman language, what does mounting means? Component mounting means what happened basically?
So basically, React will, so when we are passing in this component, app.jsx will go over here, this app will be called. So React, this particular component is basically a function call. So this is
Mm-hmm.
basically just a syntactical sugar, where what basically we are trying to do over here is we are doing a React.create element function, then we are doing a div, and we have attributes and we have values. So what
Mm-hmm.
will happen is it will create us give us a uh, React components. This particular function will return us an object.
Yep.
That object has to be rendered. So rendering is one part, creating these components is other part. Likewise, they are handled differently with the React DOM itself as well. So if you go over here, you can see that React DOM is creating a root, and then over here we are rendering it. What basically we are saying, whatever object we have given, the React, the object of that particular component holding all these values is going to be converted into our HTML element and is going to be pushed onto our DOM. So this particular, so this entire cycle, basically this entire process of creating a particular, generating a React object, or this object of that particular element or a component, pushing
Mm-hmm.
it or basically just nesting it inside all the elements or whatnot. If you are importing it in between any component itself, it's a child component or children component, creating a tree, and then obviously pushing that into our from virtual DOM to a real DOM, then from real DOM to actually rendering it on the page. This process will be called rendering. Once that element is on the DOM, once we can see it, that's the place where use effect will be called.
Okay. So in case of so we have this virtual DOM, right? We spoke about reconciliation a bit. I'm sure that the virtual DOM kind of comes together along with the reconciliation thing. In your opinion, do you find any shortcoming in virtual DOM? Have you realized anything, by writing any program or doing on any project? We always talk about the great thing about virtual DOM. Most probably we know about it. Did you figure out any shortcoming or any thoughts came in your mind?
So I do find it like, first let's understand how what will happen, let's say in a state change. Now over here we are having a pretty small component, and
Mm-hmm.
we have really simple states to manage. Let's say if I create a new component over here, and let me just tell you right now itself like this. We'll go on to that later. If I create nested components, what will happen is, like, if the top level component state changes, even if that particular state change value will not affect the child element,
Mm-hmm.
the child element will still get rendered because the parent node is updated.
Okay.
Now, app.jsx is actually the top level component. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if at top level, if anything changes, each and every subsequent value will change if we are not, let's say, memoizing it. Or, and that is one of the things which I find key. Yes, maybe some things we can do. We can check if particular previous values in this value have they changed. There are methods such as we can use react.memo. So we can use those react.memos and generate these particular components which, if their state has not changed or the particular then they will not get re-rendered. So that is still a workaround
Okay.
instead of um, what can you say, the property of a virtual DOM.
Property. Okay. So yeah. So React memo. If we come to that, it's like or use memo or use callback kind of stuff, which usually for the performance optimization, that's what the spec says. But the situation that just now I spoke to you, right, where you gave an answer about how the parent child component are associated, something changing in the parent is forcefully rendering the child component as well. Usage of memo too much might cause certain issues at times because those are for the performance optimizations. Do you find a clear cut case where you should be going for these hooks like use memo and use callback, and when you should stay away from it?
So one of the main things which I've seen is uh, like if you see there's some function, there's two parts of a, let's say, components. One is an expensive part, the other is a what's a not so expensive part when it comes to computation. If both of them are changing, let's say now let's say we are having a let user, and if I have, let's say, a function, like I'm going to take a number,
Mm-hmm.
and it is going to be returned. Let's say I have a function, let's say function, and it is get number, and it is having a really what can I say, expensive operation, I'll just write a comment and I'm going to give, let's say, mat.random, or let's say I'm going to give 6, and I'm doing let num value is equal to get number. Now let's say what will happen. I will over here to show at any point what will happen is the expensive function called, and we are having this num value. What I will do is below this I will create a p tag and just going to put the number value. Now if we go over here in our app, you can see I'm changing this and expensive function is getting called. Now if we see, this particular expensive function has nothing to do with our state. But the way React works is because the state has changed in this component, the component is going to get remounted.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, particular get number function is also going to be called again. Now, check this. When I say, oh, I have like putting spaces. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's 11 times this particular expensive function was called.
Mm.
Now, that is, let's say if this particular function was dependent upon the user value, then it's a different case, but it is not. Then what shall we do? Well, then what we need to understand is, if we have, let's say, another function, let's say if I have another value and I'll consider a particular state variable again,
Mm.
con, and or let's say, how can we do this? Okay, so we'll have a value and we'll have a set value and we have a use state. And then what we can do is, can have 0. I can say on change, and what I will try to do over here is just set value to e, just to e plus e dot target dot value. Okay, let's not do this. Let's write it in a much more better manner. I'll change it into a number. Okay, so this is what is going to happen, and only this shall trigger this particular function. Let's say we want that. And now earlier what we can do, or let's say if we stick to this as well, now this is if you have a get number and we need to call this only when we have this change. So we
Mm.
have return 6 into value. Now let's see what will happen. We're having 0. Okay, let me check it to 2, let's say. So we're having 2. Now check this. If I change the name, expensive function is still getting called. Expensive function is
Mm.
still called. This is not a good way to do this. So what we can do is, instead of just calling it over here, we can use the use callback method. We can pass the get number value and we can pass the value attribute. So what now we are saying is key, it is create this, or okay, not use sorry, use memo. So we are just memoizing this value, saying that if the value does not change, if the value state does not change, you need not update the particular, or you need not call that function. Let me check this. So if you see, I'm typing omgate, but the expensive function is not getting called.
Yep.
But if I do 5, let's say, then only expensive function is getting called.
Yep.
So what we have done is kind of said that whatever name changing functionality is separate from this expensive function. And this
Mm.
expensive function, if it only has to do with one particular state variable, it is only going to work with that. So that's
Yep.
why where we use get number. So what use memo will say, pass me the function and pass me the variables, the state variables. If
Mm.
particular array, if the whatever state variable or whatever variables they are given, if they are not changed, if they are not updated, I'm not going to give you a new value on the particular re-render. So because the component re-renders after every single state update, it's still going to say ki the previous value and this value has not changed. So we are not going to recalculate this.
Got it.
This
Got
is
it.
the best way to use, this is the ideal application of use memo. This is where we should use it.
Okay. Sure. Now to talk about a few concepts, like generic concepts, right? So we have this concept of caching, for example. We heard about caching, like we cache data, right?
Right, right, right.
Um, so when we Till what point, as per your experience or your knowledge, what are those factors, deterministic factor for caching data? For example, to what extent we should cache, how long we should cache, when we should really not putting any kind of cache, what kind of situation it is. Have you come across those thought process yet when you developed any of the applications? Or you want to kind of maybe brainstorm loudly, like when to use for caching, when not to use for caching.
So that actually is a really important thing, because what happens is application of such functions, memoizing or caching, uh,
Hmm.
there's no such formula. It's always a rule
Mm-hmm.
of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing over here we always remember is why. Now let's understand from our example itself. Why did we use memo? Because a function was expensive. But the more important part over here is that this particular value we are not changing it that often.
Hmm.
Caching is basically what we are saying is, instead of you generating a newer fresher value, we are going to store the previous function calls. Consider it in this case. Now the set value, if I'm expecting a lot of changes, so if I'm just updating this value so much, it is actually memoizing these values, which is really not so performant.
Hmm.
And I'm changing it. So let's say if this particular function is expensive, here we should not go for memoization. If the changes are frequent yet they are expensive, we shall go for a different method, such as we can throttle it, we can debounce it, and that's when we can have it. Otherwise, memoization shall only be taking place when the function is really expensive, but at the same time the frequency at which
Hmm.
that function is getting unnecessarily called, wherein we can still store the data. And obviously when uh, obviously, like, the factors on which, or the variables on which the function is dependent upon, are obviously rarely changing.
Right, right. Great. Have you come across dealing with any of the security vulnerability, maybe some attacks, web vulnerability, that kind of situations, or have you studied anything? Can you talk a little bit about the awareness of security in the web application?
One of the few things which I do keep in mind is,
Mm-hmm.
like, right now we are using React. If
Mm-hmm.
it was a normal JavaScript, let's say if it was a HTML JavaScript application, now we have
Mm-hmm.
a script over here, and if I have to target root element, what we used to do is we had a script, and what we do is let element is equal to document dot query selector, or get element by ID, and we
Mm-hmm.
will do root. But the problem is that if I have to, let's say, add a particular value inside of it, what I used to do is element dot inner HTML is equal to.
Mm-hmm.
Problem in such cases is that it might not be so. It might not come into our mind that much that yes, we are actually going ahead and using inner HTML or something. But this is a way we can actually have XSS, cross script site scripting attacks.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is, inside of this inner HTML, what one can do is they can inject a malicious script, or there's another way, and this is actually a newer way, I think, wherein an image will be added, SRC will be some error, SRC will be something, and there would be on error wherein a JavaScript will be called, which can, steal data from cookies, local storage, make a DB call which is not authorized, or
Yep.
something like this.
Yep.
We should always avoid using such methods like inner HTML or dangerously set HTML2.
You can
Why-
do that in React, in fact.
But yes, but then we have to also understand that uh, we also have an issue. That is, if we are setting cookies or doing anything with the cookies, we shall first not store any user data, let's say IDs or
Hmm.
anything in local storages. They persist infinitely, but at the same time, it's highly easy for someone to uh, grab onto that value. We should always stick to cookies and have the HTTP only header of that cookie as on, as true, so that it is going to be passed during the API calls, but there's no way you can take that.
Yep.
This
Yep.
all the idea which I have, because at my level I have not delved deep into such kind of errors and all, but simple rule of thumbs which I follow is these.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty important actually to get started. Having this idea itself is very good. The cross-site scripting, there are other kind of security attacks that at least the awareness of it is truly, truly required. Okay, so we are kind of going towards the end of this interview, but I have few more things to kind of ask to you, and also would like to give an opportunity towards the end, so that you want to ask anything to me or want to kind of know anything, we can also have that. Um, I would go for like about a developer, like who is getting into the industry. To be very specific, as a front end developer, because that's the role that this particular interview is going on for. What are the expectation that you have, from the industry, as a developer who is just getting started, embarking their journey, and going to sustain there maybe for years? What kind of expectation do you have?
So, as I'm starting my journey into front end development and joining any organizations, firstly, I'll make it clear that I don't have direct dependency on any organization of yours. Any learning or anything which will happen is obviously my responsibility, which I will thoroughly do. But one thing I really would like to enjoy is to go from a state of known to unknown. I'm from a principle that knowledge is not from known, is not from unknown to known, wherein I don't know something and go to something which I know. It is from known to unknown, wherein I know few things. Now I have to go to a path which I have no idea about. So
Mm,
working on complex application, like we discussed about security.
mm,
Now, let's say like even like we said that at my level maybe it's not required, but there will be a time wherein I should care about, or maybe my role should not obviously say ki, this is okay for my role. I'm a junior engineer, so I should not worry about this. That is not
mm,
going to happen. So
mm,
that learning process, really like I'm eager to join the industry because getting real time knowledge about such things as a developer, which I might not get from my own side projects, which I might not get
true.
opportunities in an internship. Maybe I can get as a true engineer. So that is one of the most important things. I can dive deeper into other things such as backend development, such as more about uh, how the DBs are going to be maintained, how we can make our servers more obviously performant. We are so right now I'm pushing the code onto Vercel or some applications. Tomorrow in organization we are doing everything in house. So how can we make it better for
Mm.
ourselves instead of relying on other tools? How can I make it better for me? So I really think that I really wish that the industry has this opportunity for me to learn, and because I have taken the onus that I will learn from this industry myself. And obviously the most important thing that yes, I'm not going to be dependent on you people, I'm rather going to be an asset to you, and I'm always going to work hard towards being that.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're bringing that point out. It's about not being dependent, being curious about searching thing, finding out stuff. Of course, you will have dependencies with folks, because people, there is always there's always something about being experienced. Good way, bad way. There is always something about it. You can always get things from the person who is experienced. So that you have to bank on, because you want to accelerate your own journey. But at the same time, you have to bring your stuff on table, because being experienced is not equal to how many years you have spent in the industry. Being experienced is about you truly experience something, right? Maybe you spend 2 years, but you're still maybe much more experienced than me, because you have spent a lot more time on something that I haven't spent. So that's how the experience count. So you can also bring things on table. At the same time, you also have to kind of learn things from the industry experts and the industry folks. Okay, that's great. Or individual contributor, right? If you join an organization, what are the things that you think would come as a trouble? Something that you can foresee that might not go so well when you start contributing as an individual contributor in a company. Let's say you have a remote job, you're working as an individual contributor. What are the things that you foresee as a problem or challenge?
I think maybe it's like considering that I have already worked on few application and few organizations myself.
Hmm.
One of the things which is that, let's say if I'm, like you also said that although I'd say ki I will be completely self-reliant, that's
Hmm.
all basically just a mindset and rather not the reality. It's important that maybe there is a situation wherein I might not understand what we have done, and we might have our practices. One of the things which I do find is that maybe what are the company practices, what are the what we have to actually maintain. Like it's not just pushing code, it's about how we write the code, how are we going to maintain the code,
Hmm.
basically,
Hmm.
how are we going to maintain the code in the GitHub as well. At the same time, how to write, like what are the principles we are going to follow. It's like generally I feel this in that case ki someone's code is someone's temple and I should not bring my dirty shoes inside of it, right? So that is something which I feel ki maybe I might write a code which you might not like. It might do the job, but doing the job itself is the bare minimum. So maybe that, and that will take me some housing time to understand what is expected, not just from the code, but from the
Hmm.
entire process of writing and pushing the code to production.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Okay, so I kind of went through whatever I had to go through in almost 1 hour time. I'll probably give you a couple of minutes in case you have certain question to me or you want to know anything from me. I'm sitting at the other side of the table, being an employer who is recruiting you. So if you have any questions,
So I just wanted to ask, like, accordingly, like considering the profile as well and everything, what are the requirements? Like we are just like now I just said we have some practices and all. What things which you think I should be careful about? And joining your organization in future, are there any things if I'm well prepared before itself in such cases would be beneficial?
okay, yeah, great question. So the fact is like you really cannot determine like what exact work will come to you at the daily basis before you join the organization, and nobody can really pinpoint and tell you, hey, this is the work that you'll be doing it. The reality is like they'll be hiring you, saying this is what you'll be working. Tomorrow you might be working on something completely different because business is what matters. The money, the customer, that is what the matter, at the end of the day, or the product that somebody is incubating. So for that, wherever you have to get fitted, you will fit yourself. That's the thing. But there are few things I believe that as implicit quality that one individual can come up with, apart from the basic knowledge of code, fundamentals, and all the stuff. I think that curious mind is something is very important. In today's age, is like if you are coming with a very open mind, like I will learn anything and I don't have any baggage, and I'm not going to create any baggage on myself, also on the organization. Because if I'm coming and say, boss, I am a React developer, don't pronounce anything else in front of me, I'm going to work only on React. For some organization it might go well, but for many organization it won't, because tomorrow they might not have a application to build on React on something else, and they cannot go for another hiring, giving you a salary. So you need to be a bit open on acceptable situation where you will at least give it a try. You will be curious about exploring things. And then if it is really not your cup of tea, it's not possible. For example, a front-end web developer guy is coming and you're giving him or her a problem on data science. The
Right.
person doesn't have the background of data science, needs certain learning curve to go through and then to come back. If the organization is not giving that time to the individual, then it doesn't make sense, right? That dialogue itself doesn't come. But if there is a time and you can actually go through it, you be curious about it, this is going to really improve your profile, you're getting a training, and then you want to get some hands on top of it, that's something that you should be open about it. That's first thing. Second, openness is about giving ideas and the sense of being treated equal. I think one of the things that traditionally we missed out in this industry is that hierarchy of senior versus junior, you know the number of experience and all these things. I think that has to go somewhere, that not giving the similar kind of space and similar kind of priorities, and it is always like a caste system. There is an experience system in the organization that has to kind of go, and you should yourself start treating like I am equal to them. I should be treated equally. I should put forward my points as I am doing it at my home, as somebody else in the office is doing it, and I have all this liberty to do that. So that's kind of culture that you should be expecting from an organization. Not all the organization would give you that culture, but you can put it in your expectation, because things are changing today. And I hope that many of the organization would adopt it, and they will also like facilitate this kind of stuff. So as a person, apart from knowing code and all, these are the attributes that I would suggest that you have, so that you have a better future and you have a better judgment, like something working for you versus something not working for you.
Thank you for that. I'll be prepared for all these things, and not just as a coder, I'll be a good employee too.
Yeah, that's
Thanks
that's
for that.
very important. I mean, see, the thing is, um, our good coder is always there. They're the prime thing that people go for recruiting. They're the good programmer and all these things. But if a good programmer is really creating chaos in the team, I think that's the last thing somebody would want, right? You can be a great person, but if you're not reachable, if you're not somebody whom somebody else can work with, I think that's somewhere creating a lot of more bottleneck than it's actually solving by that programming.
Right.
So one person has to really work on their some of this communication skill. It's not only about speaking in English, that kind of using the right words and all this stuff. It's also about how you see yourself in the organization in a long run, so that you and the organization both can work hand in hand and can get benefited from each other. That's what we need to kind of look for.
Yeah. I'll be making sure that I do follow these principles in my journey.
Sure. That's good. That's good. Any other questions that you have?
Just one more. That is technically, if I have to say,
Yeah.
uh, as I'm going to progress, what are the things which I should know? Like basically, I know the building blocks. I know how to create app. On top of them, what are some things which I have to know instead of just like we have this whole notion backend plus front end is equal to full stack, or
Hmm.
just create, read, update, delete. That's it. That's
Hmm.
entire application done. But like we just discussed, security. Other things which I should be focusing upon in that.
Yeah. So, yeah, those two things that you mentioned, I'll just put some emphasis is like the front end plus back end equals to full stack, and every application in this world are CRUD application. So these arguments are good to have. I mean, I treat them as kind of fun stories. But to move on from that, thing that you need to know is like understanding end customers, end users. Okay. So anything fancy or anything like trendy, relevant, people are going behind is this particular technology, that particular technology, Devin, for example, nowadays. Uh, so anything is there, that will be there. But at the end of it, if you're working in an organization, you need to understand the use cases that a customer is looking for from you, basically. So if you are not able to solve a end customer problem, irrespective of what technology you know, how better you know, it is of least use. Even if you have your own company or you're working somewhere else, it remains same. Unless otherwise, you always get kick from doing side projects, and only you see the side projects. Some people probably like comment on the side projects and you move on. But if you really want to make it as a like business, you're living out of it, you want to join a company or you want to open your own company, you have to think about customers, the users. So the thing that you need to think through apart from technical thing is like understanding customers in customers use case. How do they think? You may think this button should be here, they think that button is here. That is a different story. You guys can work together to figure out where the button should go, but try to understand why is it coming from the fact that the button should be this side.
Right.
Right, maybe there is some use case that the person is having in their mind, with that use case you are not actually acknowledging or covering, and after hearing that you can always discard that, it's fine. But first listen to that. If a customer is asking for a table which is like virtualized, you just load the data as you go on, why exactly the customer is looking for that kind of table? Why is not asking for pull all the data on the at a first shot which you want to propose? Like why your customers use case is different, right? So depending on this kind of situation that a customer is coming up with, I think you will learn a lot better to create your own stories tomorrow. This is what I think a entry level programmer wouldn't mind much, because they will be focusing on technology, rightly so, they should be doing that. But apart from that, understanding the customer use cases, understanding your user base, that is what is going to take you to the next level, because you will be thinking like them. And when the time comes of incubating something, giving ideas to your next releases and all, you'll be always putting one step ahead than others. And people will start realizing that okay, you are putting some effort in understanding the pain point of the customers, and that's what we are here for, to solve their problem.
Yes, and make sure that I also
It don't happen overnight. It happened through a lot of observation, a lot of issues that get reported. You burn your midnight oil fixing those issues, asking to the customer for more questions. That's how it happened. But main part here is like, are you curious about it, knowing this? Are you getting into this, that kind of stuff? Get into support call, listen to a customer, like what is saying, what kind of pain point, that kind of stuff, basically.
I think. My all questions are answered actually. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm done from my side.
Okay,
if,
that's great. I'm
if
also
you
done from my side. If you don't have anything else, so I guess that it was good interview. Although we did a mock interview, but we tried to keep it in a way like it looks like a real interview within 1 hour time, and try to get something out of it. Both you, me, and anybody who will be watching it later point in time. So thank you, Om, again for you know getting ready for this one. It is not easy, I know, and I hope that you also learned something out of this.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me over here. And it also gave me that kind of a zing to prepare for it, to work hard to learn about it, because this was supposed to be as if it's a mock interview, but I said it if this was a real interview, and that's how I practiced, that's how I prepared, and for all
Excellent.
I've been preparing for this one. So thank you for having me over here. It's a really great opportunity for me. It's a really great experience. So now I feel prepared. Now I feel confident about myself going forward. So thank you for this.
Excellent. Excellent. That's the purpose. So all the best to you. Wherever you go, keep rocking, and we'll probably meet again in some of the other sessions in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tapas.
Yeah.